So rents are up 10%. This is good news for landlords. We're going to deep dive into what this all means. And also we're going to share with you news about a special upcoming event that we've got lined up for you. So stay tuned for this property breaking news. As usual, I'm joined by Andrew Roberts. Andrew, hello.
Hello, Ranjan, and thank you for inviting me back again. What a wonderful time we're going to have today.
What a wonderful time, and what a wonderful shirt. Comments in about his shirt in the description below if you like or dislike. Remember, the like or disliking of the shirt is different from the liking of this video. Smash the like button if you like the video. Anyway, let's get on with it. Rightmove have put out some interesting bit of research. They're saying rents are up 10%. It's pretty good, isn't it?
That's a phenomenal increase in rents, but I think we have to take it into context. Why are rents up? Rents are up because of demand. Now, if we looked at it, there is only 74,000 properties to rent at this moment in time in London. But that compares to 132,000 this time last year.
But the thing is, last year we had all the COVID-19.
We did.
And there was record in inventories of stock available to let. Rents were down, and
correct.
People, weren't necessarily, particularly in London. People didn't need to rent a flat in London if the office in the city is shut.
Absolutely. Well, everybody was Zooming from home, weren't they? So because they were Zooming from home, I think we have to take the data back a little bit further. And if we go back to 2018, there was typically 100,000 homes to rent in London. So we are down on that. And because we're down, that is putting upwards pressure on price because there's more competition for properties.
I think you're right. Basically, last year's figures to compare it against is a little bit of an abnormal figure. But we do know that landlords are exiting the market, particularly in high-value areas. They're cashing in their chips.
Yeah, they certainly are. And the reason they're exiting those areas is several-fold. One, you've got the taxation increases. Two, you've got the increase in regulation and burden on landlords. And three, they're just not getting the returns in those high-value areas that you can get elsewhere or in other property strategies. So it's causing a dip in inventory to be available.
Yes, and this is, I think, further exasperated in high-value areas, particularly where landlords have owned the properties for a long time. They've experienced some capital gain, and they're looking at low yields because property prices have gone up quite a lot.
Yeah.
So the yields are getting lower. And then you think, well, if you look at the yields that you're going to earn on the property going forward, is it worth it for all the cash that's tied up in the asset?
Well, it certainly isn't worth it. We did a video on prices that hadn't increased since 2007
yes.
previously. And what we were looking at there was the yields might have been great, but the capital growth was negative. Now, I think it's important that as investors, we find a balance because capital growth is not always guaranteed. And if we look at some of the chatter on some of the internet forums, it's talking about drops in prices of property and there's going to be a crash. Now, we've done videos before on the economy and inflation and how that is not going to happen at this moment in time.
Yes. So, stock is down. Some landlords are pulling out, and that's obviously a concern. Rents have gone up by 10% or so. And also good news for landlords is voids are coming down quite rapidly. The average time it's taking to rent a property is a lot less.
It is. Well, we're going from 36 days void down to 17 days void, which obviously means landlords are able to increase that yield from that property because they've got the lower void period. But the other thing is you're referring to a 10% increase in rents. Now, depending on the source of the data, and this is the interesting thing, is the source of data that you refer to, some sources are saying rents are up 15% in London and 10% nationwide. Now, when we actually rebase that, the rents fell 10% during the pandemic, and comparing the rents now to pre-pandemic, they've only gone up 15% over 3 years.
London, of course, has its own problems, I think. I think the landlord pullout is far more accelerated in London. And there's some reports talking about particular boroughs where stock has fallen even more, like Islington.
Yes.
And they also happen to be boroughs where they've brought in place additional licensing requirements, which they kind of were going to bring in much earlier, but they put off until after COVID. So now some of those landlords are deciding to sell up. But this also, what I find happens at times when the rental markets go up, means is the affordability of one person staying in a single flat can be a bit challenging. So if you have, there's more of a demand for high quality HMOs and co-living type of concepts as a way around that.
Absolutely. Well, I think the thing for me, and going back to that affordability, is if rents have risen 10%, have people's salaries kept pace? And if they've not kept pace, basically it causes renters to actually rent something that is smaller than they used to have at the end of tenancies. And that is why the growth in co-living and quality co-living, and I know you've shared through the Property Investor Awards some fantastic examples of co-living, and that is where there is going to be increasing demand, is in that quality co-living space.
We'll get back to the video in just a moment. What is the most exciting opportunity in property right now? And that is repurposing defunct commercial buildings to residential use. Now, most people don't really know where to start, what to look for, and how to exploit these opportunities. And that's why I've prepared 90 minutes of free training for you to get you started on this wonderful journey. You can register for this free training at property-workshop.com. Join me on that free training, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the video. But I think there are some losers in this, and it's worth having a discussion about the social housing sector and the LHA rates, because the local housing authority rate card that they will pay for people on benefits for, say, a 2-bedroom flat or 3-bedroom flat are set for a period of time.
Yeah.
And at times when there's a rise, they become out of step. And of course, if the local authority is paying £300 for your flat, but the real rent is £500, it's up to the tenant to top it up. And when there is obviously pressure with energy and food and all the rest of it, that's going to be a bit of a challenge and a possible tenant arrears issue coming up for people.
Well, it's going to be a massive gap opening up. I mean, just the energy crisis alone that you're referring to, where energy prices leapt 50% this month. We're sitting there and going, whoa, how are people going to afford to not just pay their heating bill, but buy food, which is also increasing in price, and then pay their rents as well? Unless incomes rise, it is going to cause a crashing of people's budgets and them having to make serious choices as to, do they heat, do they eat, or do they have shelter?
Yes. When we read a report like this about rents being up 10% or whatever, what are your takeaways from this as a property investor?
Well, my takeaways are really that you have to understand the message that's being conveyed and understand the source of the data and the purpose that the writer of that report is presenting. Now, to me, number one, the report is presenting a picture that, woe is me, the world is bleak. Well, actually, rents are up because there are fewer properties available because more people have moved back to London and filled them. Therefore, the voids that were during the pandemic have gone down. What we're also comparing is saying rents to a period when they were very stagnant during the pandemic and falling are up. Well, they will be because it's the supply and demand economics that we're looking at here. So I think it's important we look at the data that is being presented and understand what it means to our business.
Yes. And there's another thing I think that is a bit of an elephant in the room right now. Property prices have gone up a lot in the last year or so.
Absolutely.
And so have rents. But the challenge is that the number of areas where single family lets actually work and stack up at the current house prices, even at the current rents, seems to be falling.
Yeah.
So there are other types of strategies that people have to follow to get the right cash flows from their property investments.
That is absolutely true. And what we have seen is a growth in areas such as the serviced accommodation, the HMO models, and the co-living models. Then we've also got the commercial conversions, which is where you take low value square footage and convert it to high value residential.
Which in my view, of course, is the best model, and we've got plenty of videos on this channel. It's an absolute dream, but more on that later.
Absolutely. So get yourself educated, stay tuned to this channel. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button. Please tell me you like my shirt.
And we, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we are back with the Baker Street Property Meet live first meet in central London on 27th of April. So if you want to find out more about that, get yourself down there, bakerstreetpropertymeet.com to book a ticket. We've got 192 people already booked, so it's going to sell out pretty quickly. If you want to be there, make sure you secure your place. And we'll see you there. See you there live, and also in the next video. Bye for now.
You live in the USA.
I do live in the
You're over
US.
here on business.
Yes, I am.
And you've made a special trip to come here to the Baker Street Property Meet.
The quality of people here is better than quite a lot of the other meets.
Come all the way from California, and one of the reasons why I'm here, to meet like-minded people, other investors, build my network, and continue learning and growing in the property industry.
I found it's quite informative, and I can meet a lot of amazing people, so I keep coming.
Great knowledge in a great environment with like-minded individuals.
Brilliant!